Thank you, Yuri, and welcome everybody to What's Up with Our Jails. We thank you for being here. We thank you for caring enough. The world is in turmoil. It's changing. And if it's going to change in the right direction, it's going to need people like you and me to bend the arc so that it tends toward justice. We're here today to educate, motivate, activate, and celebrate those who are making a difference in our world. We're going to look at our county jails. We're going to look at the prison industrial complex as it lives in our neighborhoods. And we're going to give you the tools and the information to make it what it should be and to move it from what it is. So we're so glad that you're here. We're going to begin with a little overview from one of our stars at the Interfaith Coalition for Justice in Our Jails, our own Mickey Duxbury. Will begin now with a little overview and let us know how and why we're here.
Hi, everybody. I really want to welcome you all. You're not all in yet, but there's over 240 people that are registered for this event, so you're in really good company. I want to start out with a special shout out to all of our co-sponsors, and you've seen them on the slide, and the slide will, here we are again. The Interfaith Coalition for Justice in Our Jails is thankful to be in partnership with all of you, and we look forward to working with you in the future. Most of us here, am I still on the screen? I don't know, I can't see. Most of us here know that the criminal justice system is beyond broken. It doesn't just destroy the lives of individuals. It impacts their families and their friends and their whole communities. But especially, most especially, communities of color. African Americans are 9% of the population of our county, but on an average year, they constitute 48% of the people that are in Santa Rita jail. The reentry services that we do have can never be fully effective if people continue to be punished on the outside for the collateral damages of having been on the inside. Did you know that if you've had a felony, you can never be a barber, you can never work in a school as a janitor, and hundreds of other restrictions? When people are incarcerated instead of treated in the community for their mental illness and substance abuse, we're not any safer. When people with low-level offenses are not offered restorative justice or other forms of restitution instead of jail, we're not any safer. When almost $250 million over the next 3 years is going into the coffers of the sheriff for more deputies, instead of into housing for the homeless with serious mental health problems, none of us are any safer. This system that we have is based on punishment, containment, retribution, and almost never on the possibility of redemption and genuine healing. We want to work with all of you and our partners to help change that. We also want to change the fact that of the average 2,400 people a day incarcerated at Santa Rita Jail, about 40% of those people have documented mental illness. And 25% of the entire jail population has serious mental illness. National studies have shown what we know to be true, that being in cages only makes mental illness worse. We also want to change the numbers of deaths that happen in our jail. Over the last 7 years, 56 people have died in Santa Rita Jail. 18 of them have been suicides. We have a question for the people, our elected officials and the Board of Supervisors. How is it that we keep paying millions more dollars for more sheriff's deputies, but there's still inadequate monitoring and coverage to ensure that people aren't able to kill themselves in our jail? The Sheriff's Department doesn't just control the jail. They function as the police department for all of unincorporated Alameda County. Did you know that the Sheriff's Department also functions as the coroner for the county? So when there's a death in the jail, even one that was caused by actions or inactions of the guards, a Sheriff's Department employee is the one who investigates that death. Our sheriff's department has had more legal settlements against them than any others in Northern California, and they've all been about egregious conditions and inhumane treatment. As Rosie Santiago, who has been in Santa Rita jail, stated, and I quote, "It seemed to me that most of the deputies didn't care about our safety, our health, our well-being in any way. They were disrespectful, to say the least. Mostly, they were demeaning, and they treated us with utter contempt. We want to lessen the numbers of people entering the jail, but we also want to change and work with our partners and community members to change the culture of degradation and dehumanization that happens once you're already in the jail. The district attorney's office decides who will be charged and at what level, and who can be referred to behavioral health court instead of jail. According to the latest data in December 2021, almost 94% of the daily population at Santa Rita was unsentenced. Many unsentenced are there because the DA's office often opposes no bail releases. Many are awaiting trial, and many more are there simply because they could not afford bail. This is our criminal justice system, paid for with our tax dollars, and we need to hold the powers that be, especially our Board of Supervisors and the sheriff, accountable for what happens in this jail. We want to work with our partners to help create a justice system that understands the impact of violence, racism, trauma, and poverty on people that wind up being incarcerated. We know that no one is born a criminal. We want to move in the direction of a system that helps people change and heal, including victims of crime. We know that you're going to be challenged and engaged by our great panelists tonight. We hope you'll check out the ICJJ website and get in touch if you'd like a presentation to your group or your congregation. Thank you so much for joining us. And if we're 250 people here and you talk to 10 people after this, that's a lot of people that we can get to vote and care about what happens in our jail. So thank you for joining us, and I'm going to hand it over to Reverend BK.
Thank you, Mickey. Perfect introductory remarks. And remember, this is our justice system, and it's only as good as we demand it will be. You will have an opportunity, and we encourage you to write in the chat your thoughts and your thoughtful comments. We'll also would love to hear your questions in the comment at the end of our time when our speakers have presented about a little after 7 o'clock. We'll take some of your questions, as many as we can. But until then, hold your mute buttons on and just enjoy our panels. Our first panelist is Mr. Brendon Woods. From 1996 to 2012, Brendon worked as a deputy public defender, and in 2012, he was appointed the chief public defender by the Alameda County Board of Supervisors, becoming our county's first African-American public defender. He has established many progressive initiatives, such as the Clean Slate program that helps adults on probation seal their criminal records. He sent public defenders into high schools to teach students how to assert their constitutional rights with police officers. In 2014, he created an immigration unit to represent people in immigration court, the first of its kind in California. He also started a program inside the county jail to educate people about their voting rights. Brendon has been critical of the cash bail system and has called for the elimination of fees for criminal defendants. He has been courageously outspoken as he has protested racial injustice, police brutality, and mass incarceration. We are proud to have him as the chief public defender in this county and as our first speaker. Mr. Woods.
So thank you for that very kind and I think maybe partially undeserving introduction and welcome. I really appreciate it. When I hear those accolades, I always think to myself that we have not done anywhere near enough. There are still thousands of people suffering in a cage in our county, and the racial disparities are off the charts. So I've been asked to speak to you tonight is to explain a couple of roles. First, to explain the role of the public defender, explain the role of the district attorney, and explain the role of the sheriff and how they are all interrelated. And also talk to you about some of my views on all of them. So first off, the role of the public defender. We represent people when they are accused of a crime and they cannot afford counsel. Our duties arrive from the US Constitution, the California Constitution, and the county charter. Our office was created in 1927, way before the case of Gideon versus Wainwright came out to guarantee the right to counsel. But that's what we do. So we represent people when they cannot afford counsel. And I think there are two forms of public defense. There is what I call traditional, where you just represent the person, you look at their case, you think about their criminal charges, and that's it. That's not how we want to do it here. We want to provide holistic defense, where we see our clients, we see them for what they are, and we try to improve their life circumstances. We realize that what has got them into the situation is poverty. What has got them here is racism. And we try to attack everything that's related to their criminal case, what's called a collateral consequence. So if someone comes in and they got housing issues, try to help them with that. If they got substance abuse issues, try to help with that. If they got immigration problems, try to help with that. We try to really provide what I call wraparound services and to address the issues that got them here. Because, you know, if you really care about your clients and care about their work, it doesn't take you long before you realize the people we serve are concerned about their criminal case, but they're also concerned about so many more issues. And they usually stem from poverty and racism. So that's what we try to do here. And I've been fortunate to do this work for quite some time. And I love this job. I love what I do, and I love working for this county. So moving on to the prosecutor. The prosecutor is the side that's responsible for prosecuting cases. They're responsible for evaluating police reports and determining whether there's enough evidence to bring that case to trial, or if there's enough probable cause to charge the case. They also have an ethical duty not to prosecute a case if they cannot prove it. They have an ethical duty to provide us with discovery, and they have more duties involved with their role that we can discuss more later in the question. So they are the prosecuting arm, and they're in some ways tasked with public safety. Okay? And finally, we have the sheriff. The sheriff has many roles, as you've heard. First off, I think a primary role is court security, transferring people from the court to the jail. Second is patrolling. There's several, or patrolling and a policing function. There are several areas in the county where the sheriffs are the police, in the unincorporated areas. And finally, probably the most important, in my view, is they're responsible for the jail. They're responsible for keeping people in custody. They're responsible for the care and custody and the control, I guess, of people who are in their jail. And within that, they're supposed to be keeping people safe while they're in their jail. And I believe from the comments from Mickey earlier, that's where the community feels like they're failing the most. So those are the three arms. I think I'm going to run out of time soon. I'll keep it going. I've also been asked to tell this group what I meant by the quote that was on the leaflet. And that quote was, "The system continues to fail poor, Black, and brown people, and those with serious mental illness." And what now that I read that again, that may have been poor phrasing, because that actually implies the system was designed to help poor, Black and brown people, and we all know it wasn't. The system was designed to inflict harm. The system was built on racism and white supremacy, so we should not expect that system to help us. But I say it continues to fail us because it is impossible for people to get services. It is impossible for the system to treat people with humanity and dignity. It is impossible for the system to correct itself with regard to its racial disparities. And what I mean by that is, we think about the way Black and brown people are incarcerated, not just in this county, but in this entire state, in this nation. It is, I'm trying not to swear, but it is ridiculous, it is shameful, it is embarrassing. We think about our jail, okay? We think about Santa Rita Jail. Everyone knows it is a monster. It is a huge jail. It is a monster. It can hold up to 4,000 people. It's the third largest jail in California, the fifth largest jail in the nation. It is a monster. Santa Rita Jail right now is 48% Black. Alameda County is 11% Black. So that highlights a complete problem with the system, from policing to prosecution to probation to parole. And if we think about the amount of money, not just our county, but the state spends on those three facets, policing, prosecution, probation, and parole, it is obscene. There's a reason we have mass incarceration. There's a reason. It comes down to racism and money. Okay? And I'm going to get off my soapbox soon. I know I'm going over time, but there is one agency in my mind that is county funded, that is supposed to be fighting mass incarceration, supposed to be fighting and standing up for people's rights. That's the Public Defender's Office. And we're outfunded by the DA 2-to-1. 2-to-1 on the dollar. And don't even add the money for the sheriff in or the police agencies. So you can see how we get to where we're at right now. When it comes to issues that we need to be thinking about for this election, I have a long list. I don't know if I can go a little bit more into my time. Is that okay? Okay. I have a long list, and I think they're mostly related to the prosecution. And I'll try to keep it shorter. We can have more questions at the end. I'll talk about them more. But you know, there are some things that we've seen in the debate that should be no-brainers, right? There should be no more death penalty. That should be done, right? We should stop prosecuting kids as adults. That should be done. We should end 3 strikes, right? We should stop seeking LWOP sentencing, meaning life without parole. We should stop seeking cash bail, okay? We should stop using search clauses in almost every single case.
Thank you.
I should stop? Okay.
You could give us your last sentence.
So, and I'll move on to the sheriff. We should make sure that they keep people in their custody safe. That should be the main thing on the campaign. What do they have in plan to keep people safe? Okay. I know I went over, but thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. So articulate. We love the passion. Just an announcement to everyone. We are intentionally tried to open this meeting up to as many people as we can, but it seems that our chat has been hacked. So please disregard the inappropriate things that may come up in the chat. We're going to try and keep it open, but just please disregard things that are inappropriate and write your questions there as you can. Next, we have Ms. Kimberley Graves. Kimberley Graves is a mother, grandmother, and activist fighting for equity in the criminal justice and healthcare system. As a young mother of 3, she developed a nonprofit in 1993 to address the inequities of mental health treatment in her community. She realized that those who witnessed the daily traumatic turmoil of drugs and gun violence were not receiving equitable mental health services. Death and drug addiction were a constant in her community, and she realized it was the effects of unresolved trauma that created long-term mental health issues. As a young mother, she never imagined that she would be fighting for her own son's life as a result of his mental health issues. She is here today to share her and her son's story of triumph through faith. Kimberly?
Thank you for that beautiful introduction. I want to get right started. My name is Kimberley Graves. First, I would like to give thanks to the Lord for allowing this day. I would also like to thank those who are responsible for organizing this discussion today. This is a critical time in our community, and we all must come together to find solution. The intersection of mental health issues and homelessness is steadily increasing. Conversations are important, but what we discuss and who has those discussions will determine the trajectory of the change we seek. So again, I am grateful for the opportunity to be included in this discussion with this amazing panel. My son was a bright, loving, and happy child. Around the age of 19, it was obvious he was not able to transition successfully into adulthood. I did not understand what was happening. Unfortunately, for many years, I assumed his problem was drugs. During his early 20s, I remember taking him to Cherry Hill and other drug treatment facilities to address his marijuana usage. After the progression of his illness and in his 30s, it became apparent it was more than I thought. His decision to live homeless when he was never asked to leave our home was an indication that he had to be suffering from a mental illness. I begged him to be seen by Pathways to Wellness. He finally agreed, and he was diagnosed and prescribed medication to treat his illness. It was like a miracle. I had my son back. He was able to have rational conversation and he was coherent. However, several things occurred that abruptly ended our short-lived jubilation. His white blood count was dropping and the doctors were concerned. This frightened him, and during the same time, his cousin, who's like a brother to him, died in a car accident. This all occurred in 2016, and during this time, he stopped taking his medication. In 2017, while off his medication, he went back to living homeless. I could not bear to watch him circling around our home, lost, disheveled, and homeless, so I moved. This left him without me, the only support he ever knew. He then began taking shelter in other people's cars and spiraling out of control. In 2018, his sister tried helping, and he lived with her for 6 months. Then in 2019, I received notice that he had been given a felony vandalism charge for taking shelter in someone's car. That was my window of opportunity to intervene. I had been praying for that opportunity for years. During that time, I quickly realized that the courts were not willing to work in partnership with me to support my son. If I had not hired an attorney, I can only imagine how much more difficult it would have been to navigate the legal system. The changes that would have made the greatest impact while my son and I were going through the court system is first, for the court to change its perception and image of mental illness. Instead of my son being considered a criminal, he would have been recognized as having a brain disease. It should not have been so difficult to prove he had a mental illness. I had to hire a private psychologist to ensure the courts would finally accept he was suffering from a mental health disease. The deputy district attorney agreed to allow my son to be seen by a court-appointed advocate to determine if he could participate in assisted outpatient treatment program. I later learned that she used the signed release forms to request his records from the previous years in which I sought help for him through Alameda County. That leads me to the second thing that could have been done differently throughout the process. The focus of the DA was not to find solution, because if it were, she would have not denied him for AOT after promising to do so once he signed the forms. Instead, her focus was to prove Alameda County tried to help him in previous years. I believe the court's focus was to diminish the county's accountability to my son and his current situation. Therefore, the county saw my son as its opponent. So rather than acting in partnership and assisting in finding solution, the court's position was to defend itself of any wrongdoing, a position which also said he was a criminal and deserved to be punished accordingly. My next change goes along with what I just said. The adversarial relationship caused me to have to force conversation with the DA. I had to send her direct emails to insert myself in the process. The wealth of information which I held regarding my son should have been encouraged. Instead, it was always clear in her communication that my attempts to save my son were futile and hopeless. In other words, the obstacles in court processes were boldly sending a message that this was beyond my comprehension and control. Everything was done to convince me to give up. It costs less and it's more efficient if the lines of communication were open and transparent. As an African-American woman who has continuously had to fight against oppression and discrimination, I was too familiar with the treatment. Many of my friends have said to me, Kim, do you want to be labeled as, quote, the angry Black woman? And I said to them, what do you mean? All of us are angry and we have every right to be. Why would we be concerned about a label someone else tries to place upon us to supposedly make us ashamed? I learned as a young woman during my years at UC Berkeley that I must channel my anger into a productive response. My famous line is, I fight with the pen and paper. Instead of becoming physical, irrational, and doing things that bring harm against myself, I do the research, gather the facts, and I write powerful letters that shows my anger in power. As the old saying goes, the pen is mightier than the sword. In addition to the above changes, I feel it is also important for my son and those like him to be recognized for having anosognosia. Anosognosia is a condition that prevents a person who suffers from it from having the ability to assist in their own best interest. Therefore, the next best person to support them when they cannot do it for themselves is their immediate family, in most cases, their mother and father. Many of those living in squalor and under the most horrific conditions are suffering from that illness. We must get back to our basic humanity and recognize that supporting our most vulnerable citizens creates a culture which will benefit us all. If we invite the family to the table without obstruction, together we can create an atmosphere of progress. The sooner we disrupt the pattern of our loved ones believing they are well and not knowing they are ill, the sooner we can begin their treatment for healing. I also believe that the Villa Fairmonts may not be perfect, but they are better than nothing. Rather than go with the old saying, throw the baby out with the bathwater, FASME, the organization started by Katie Poloni and Allison Monroe, along with many other advocates, proposed that we build a bigger, better Villa Fairmont. Today, I am my son's treatment facility, without the facility or the doctors to go in it. However, he is truly a success story. What has worked to get us here is, of course, my fierce advocacy, but more importantly, he exercises 30 minutes a day for 5 days a week. He drinks smoothies with raw vegetables, fruits, and supplements every day, and he has daily responsibilities. This is after enduring more than 18 years, and many of those years crying out daily for his recovery. Lastly, I believe this forum and everyone involved are amazing for coming together at such a critical time as today. Bipartisan is when two opposing political parties come together and vote for the greater good instead of voting based on their party lines. Today, we have shown that we can come together despite our different races, educational levels, economic status, or political parties. We have decided to collaborate for the greater good. We must choose to vote for our next sheriff and district attorney with the same purpose, for the greater good. This movement is the epitome of humanity, and I am thankful to be a part of it.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. What a powerful voice and a powerful testimony of love and a mother's care. And don't we need that, not just as individuals, but we need that as our system. Amen. So thank you, Brendon Woods, phenomenal, Kimberly, phenomenal. Our next phenomenal speaker is Mr. Rudy Howell. Rudy Howell is the newest member of the Oakland Police Commission. As a commissioner, he wants to make sure that Oakland police officers get to know their community. He also works as an impact coach at Rubicon programs, where he helps other formerly incarcerated people re-enter society with a special focus on helping them get into college. He is a coach, a mentor, and motivator for people in custody at Santa Rita Jail. He assists them in their education to be successful in careers that will increase their earning potential and keep them out of poverty. While he was incarcerated, Rudy received an AA in business administration and received his bachelor's degree from San Francisco State University in criminal justice in 2016. We're so excited and pleased to have you, Rudy. We're listening.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, thank you for the introduction. So my past experience with 21 years of incarceration provides me with the insight into the process of adapting to life in prison, and then the challenges of reentry after you've completed your time. So what I'd like to do is quote or reference the document I've got that was created by the Coalition for Police Accountability, Faith in Action in East Bay, and Interfaith Coalition for Justice in our jails. And the focus tonight is the extensive community concerns regarding the Alameda County Sheriff's Office that include the highest numbers of inmate deaths and lawsuits in the region, U.S. Department of Justice reporting and lawsuits documenting the failure to provide adequate custodial mental health services, efficient re-entry resources, and lack of transparency in the ACSO budget and operations. So what I'd like to focus on here tonight is the report of inefficient re-entry resources. And then I'd like to mention the benefits of law enforcement community oversight. So to begin, rehabilitation starts from day one of incarceration. So does preparing for re-entering society. So I start off with a 25-year sentence. So from that first, no matter how long the sentence is, just start moving towards self-development and those opportunities if they're available. So historically, America tried mass incarceration. I was arrested in the 90s, and that was the height of the war on drugs and all those efforts for drug interdiction. So they tried mass incarceration and throwing away the key. So they gave me a 25-year sentence, started with a life sentence. It got reduced to a 25-year sentence. And then basically as a 23-year-old kid, they were throwing away the key because, for a first-time offense, that's a lot of time for a 23-year-old kid. So throwing away the key and not really thinking about the outcomes in the future, and me not knowing I would ever make it out, but thankfully I did. So with the mass incarceration, throwing the key, the outcomes of that still plague us to this day. America's mass incarceration experiment has proven to be a costly failure for society as a whole, and more specifically, an absolute failure in communities of color. Currently, our safety continues to be compromised with the cost of the war on drugs not providing any substantial return on that investment. And some of the things I've read put that cost of the war on drugs around in the trillions. So, you can verify that with your own research. The mass incarceration experiment created in the US the highest prison population in the world. Many who now are returning home from long sentences find themselves in a condition of homelessness and increased poverty without any opportunity to work their way out of it. So right now, I currently work with the Chabot College RISE program. And what we're doing there is we're trying to bring access to college education in Santa Rita jail. We were able to get in there one time, and we were able to present, tell everybody about our program. And we had a pretty good turnout. We went to a couple pods, and we were supposed to return and do another presentation, but COVID rules, all this stuff that was happening, we haven't been able to get back in. So we've been in there, and that was probably about maybe a year ago. And we've been trying to get in ever since to get these programs off the ground. The college is ready to go. We just need access to the prisoners and the jail. We need to get in. I believe in the demilitarization of law enforcement and redirecting funds to empowering historically targeted communities and its members. The goal of community empowerment is to increase equity for all communities who have a stake in the outcomes of policing practices. This requires the development of relationships that need trust and willingness to work towards effective solutions together. So that's all stakeholders, the law enforcement agency, public defenders, everybody, all the stakeholders who want to see a change need to come together and work together to bring this change forward. Community oversight of the Alameda Sheriff Department can assist in all the points I previously mentioned. I would like now to reference information I found on the Nation Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement. Their website is nacole.org, and then you can see these list of benefits / benefits. Okay, so the first, there's a whole page. I just picked out a few of them that I thought were pertinent. So complainants, when you have an oversight body, complainants are given a place to voice concerns outside the law enforcement agency. This in itself makes sense. This allows for the complaint that has been issued to be addressed with somebody of a restorative mindset instead of a punitive or military mindset. So we can bring some objectivity to what's going on with these complaints and bring attention to some issues that might be developing or trends, and bring attention to that so they can get addressed before it turns into something else. Civilian oversight can help hold the sheriff's department accountable for officers' actions. This potential benefit will allow for the thorough investigation of misconduct. And I use the word thorough because instead of just in internal affairs, you have the internal affairs and the oversight investigation. So 2 independent investigations on a complaint with hopefully they find different findings or whatever it is, and then they can go from there. Of misconduct to include, and these investigations should include situations of implicit bias, addressing the issues of structural and systemic racism. So for me, structural refers to the legal structure. Systemic, for me, relates to the practice. Okay, so historically, you can see the history of racist laws and then the practice of enforcing them. Civilian oversight can help improve the quality of the department's separate internal investigation of the alleged misconduct. The improved quality on internal investigations will keep a strict adherence to community policing principles so that the practice of law enforcement does not degrade into race enforcement. Now, historically, you can see a lot of what is called law enforcement in some communities has been race enforcement in other communities. And this race enforcement is witnessed throughout our American history. The impetus of the history of race in this country, we are still continuing to correct. We're still working towards correcting it. The community has been reassured, the community can be reassured that discipline is being imposed when appropriate and increases the transparency of the disciplinary process. So this is another benefit of oversight, transparency. It's very important. People in the community want to know what's happening to their loved ones. Are their rights being maintained? So this is very important feature of an oversight body.
Thank you, Mr. Howell. Could you give us your last sentence?
Yes. Okay, to sum it up, community-based policing utilizes problem-solving techniques in conjunction with a cooperative community to proactively address their concerns.
Thank you so much. Very, very, very powerful statement, very powerful testimony. We are very proud of who you are and what you're doing. Our last speaker is Lonnie Hancock, and Lonnie Hancock for me is a legend. Long before I knew her, I saw her name blazoned in 25-foot letters on billboards all over. Lonnie Hancock, it would take a book to list Lonnie's achievements. So we'll just name a few. She was on the Berkeley City Council from 1971 to 1979 when she was about 12, I think. She was the first woman to be elected mayor in 1986. After serving 2 terms, she served in the Clinton administration, heading the Western Regional Office of the Department of Education. In the California Assembly, she chaired the Committee on Natural Resources and helped pass significant environmental legislation. Lonnie is relentless in her advocacy to expand healthcare for children, reduce high school dropout rates, increase funding for foster youth, and help to prevent Medi-Cal cuts for seniors and people with disabilities. Lonnie passed legislation that provided a parole hearing for state prisoners who committed their crimes before the age of 18 and were prosecuted as adults. She continues to be a fierce advocate for housing the homeless, lessening the numbers of seriously mentally ill that wind up in our jails, and for shifting the investment from incarceration to investment in our communities. Lonnie, we're so glad to see you and to hear. One announcement let me make before you speak, that is, with our chat challenges, please, if you have a question or a comment, put it in the chat directly to Ann Janks. Just that pull down menu, go to Ann Janks and write your question. And after Lonnie has spoken, we'll start asking questions. Lonnie?
Thank you. Thank you so much. What you didn't mention in the introduction is that I spent the last 6 years of my 14 years in the state legislature chairing the budget committee and the policy committees that dealt with prisons in the state of California. We worked so hard during that period of time. We did realignment to get more people out of prison. We tried to improve the education in prisons. We tried to improve the horrific conditions of confinement. And we did sentencing reform, as you pointed out, Pastor. And we did try to create hope that young people sentenced to life in prison without parole at under the age of 18 could have a parole hearing and get out. And I've heard from actually so many of those young men who had hope, who changed their lives and who got out and have good lives right now. So imagine I was turned out of the legislature, came home to find that our local county jail has so many of the very same conditions that we fought in our prison system. And here we are, one of the richest, one of the most progressive, supposedly, counties in the state of California. And we have a jail, and you've heard the statistics, 40% of the people in there have mental illness, more deaths in custody and suicides than any other jail in Northern California. And then, of course, the horrendous sums of money that our money, taxpayer money, that has been spent on settlements from public interest law firms who bring lawsuits against the jail, and Alameda County settles for more money to the jail to make conditions better. Now, I know enough about mental illness and my experience at the state level. You don't get better in jail. There needs to be a continuum of mental health care in our community, the kind of thing that people like Kimberly have been advocating for, that begins with acute care, subacute care, and moves people into permanent supportive housing at various levels of support, whatever really is going to work. One of the things that it's just I've also been involved with the people that are trying to protest the over $318 million that Alameda County recently agreed to settle to the jail for one of the lawsuits that was brought against it. And I've been interested in the discussion of transparency from some of the other panelists. I've always wondered, does the county and the Board of Supervisors, when they negotiate, do they say, how about if instead of adding 96 sheriff's deputies, we put a stabilizing facility like the Fairmont, which Kimberly referenced? What if we use that money in a different way? Do the well-meaning public interest law firms say no, no, no? Or doesn't it ever come up? We need transparency there, I think. So I'm so glad we have so many people here today. And there are 3 areas where I think we have real opportunities right now in the next year. One, we need to pay attention to the Board of Supervisors. You know, they mostly run unopposed. They don't have any real press coverage. And we've really been trying to figure out how to get through and embarrass them into a continuum of mental health care that will keep people out of our jail. The good news is we've had a success. It's called Care First, Jail Last. This was a policy adopted by the supervisors in LA County a couple of years ago. And it says you don't put people in jail if you can give them care first. And I want to shout out at this point to groups like Incarcerated Alameda County, because they worked really hard and really effectively and finally got that policy unanimously passed by the Board of Supervisors. Last week, the Care First Implementation Committee, which I believe Kimberly will be on, and other people on this call may be on too, had its first meeting. Pay attention to it. Tell the supervisors they've got to take the recommendations. The committee needs support, and there could be a chance for real change if their recommendations are acted on. Secondly, Gavin Newsom has just jumped into a big idea, which is something he's calling Care Court, which would allow family members to have a larger voice in what happens to their loved ones, and would require counties to set up services in the county for people with mental health issues. Alameda County could use that. We need to support that and point out what needs to be done to make it good, strong legislation. Just an idea now. Finally, hey, everybody, we have elections this year. There will be elections for DA. There will be elections for sheriff. And these are elections with multiple candidates, unlike most of our Board of Supervisor elections. I would really encourage everybody here and their organizations realize the importance of a sheriff that would be a partner with us in doing these things. Realize a DA that understands the problems and issues around mental health, around incarceration, and could work with us to get some of the changes that have been suggested today. And I would say, get to know these candidates, have forums, send out questionnaires. I've been a candidate on many levels of government. I'll tell you, every organization sends out a questionnaire. They have forums, and see how they feel about partnering, and see how they feel about the issues that we've discussed today. You know, the mental health courts, the care court that the governor is proposing is a little like the mental health courts. We need to work with the court system too. because you can't divert somebody if there's no place they can be diverted to. And right now in Alameda County, we've heard, and no one has ever contradicted it, that only 3 out of 20 people, 5150 in crisis to John George Psychiatric Center, can be admitted. What do the rest of them do? The jail is the place, to paraphrase Robert, the jail is the place where when you have to go there, they have to take you in. That's not right. And we can stop it. And we have these elections coming up. They're usually pretty invisible elections. It's up to us to make sure they're on everybody's mind, and we get people elected who will help us and work with us, make the changes we need. I really want to just, in the last couple of years, it's been very inspiring for me to work with all of you, because there are groups that care, that are learning. We're all learning about these things all the time. The families are incredibly important, and their voice needs to be amplified. So lots we can do together, everybody. And I want to thank the people that put together, ICJJ and others who put this forum together, because we're all in the same place and we can figure out how we move forward together from here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lonnie. Thank you so much. Yes, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it, to educate, to motivate, to get everybody excited about not just imagining a new world, imagining a place where everybody's not instantly put in jail and children are not thrown away for the rest of their lives, but that we have a just society. That's why we're having this forum, and we want to encourage you to take the information you have here and talk to 10 people, talk to 5 people, talk to your neighbors, talk to your family. Now it's time for some questions. I want to mention that the state of California has a $75 billion surplus, with another $100 billion coming from the feds in the next year. We need to tell the governor what to do with that money, and we don't need any more jails. So let's go now to our panelists and some questions. Let's see. There's a question for Rudy, for Mr. Howell. Are people who have been incarcerated allowed and welcomed in mentoring and programs at Santa Rita? And we're going to ask you to, let's try and keep our answers to about 2 minutes or 3 minutes or less, and then we'll get a lot of questions in.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so when I went in there with me and Eric Gentry, who is the program manager of the RISE program at Chabot College. And we went in there and we did a presentation telling, the prisoners about our background, that we were there. Eric himself is actually at Santa Rita. I was in the federal system, so I was in a different place. But, just the look on their face, like, oh, there is hope for them to see us as formerly incarcerated coming back to present. It had such an impact. You could just see it. You could just see it on their faces. And then, we went to the pod with the women, and then one of the ladies just started crying. So, I believe it was very impactful when we went there just to tell our stories, and how we made the change through education to stay on track, a positive track.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kimberly, for you, what is the most strategic way to apply pressure to decrease suicides in the jail?
To basically, if it's a loved one that's suffering from mental illness, what I did was I was able to get the direct number to that department, because they should actually be in a separate part of the jail. And so you would be able to reach out to them that are responsible for providing the care to that segment of the population. So you can reach out to them directly. The other thing I did was I asked them to allow my son to sign a release form, the HIPAA form, because that's another thing they use. to block family members out. So you need to immediately get the HIPAA form signed if it's your loved one. Be constant in contact with the department in which they are, because they have to talk to you. They have to answer your phone calls, and you can keep aware of what's happening with them inside.
Awesome, wonderful. Attorney Woods, why do we still have cash bail and keep so many incarcerated just awaiting trial? Doesn't that also promote increased plea bargaining?
It absolutely promotes increased plea bargain. People across the state, across the nation, people are in custody and they're innocent of crimes, but they will take deals just to get out of jail. It happens all the time. We still have cash bail because it's based on money. There are corporations making millions and billions of dollars on it. That's why we have cash bail. They have a very strong union. They have politicians in their pocket, so it exists. I think we need to, I think it's complicated. I think cash bail has no place. I'm probably on the more left spectrum. I don't think that anyone should be detained pre-trial, honestly, because they're innocent until proven guilty. And so if we believe in the right to trial, a right to a fair trial and the presumption of innocence, people shouldn't be held in custody pre-trial. And we see so many racial disparities based on that.
Yeah,
So,
48% to 11%. Thank you. Lonnie, we have a question for you. Can we build a way for the public to be involved in settlement discussions for big cases such as the Baboo case and the Disability Rights California case?
I've been wondering that myself. I don't know. These tend to be, every case I know has been totally secret. And then it becomes also a reason when you ask the supervisors what they're doing about the problems at the jail, they say, oh, well, there's a lawsuit, we can't discuss it. I think some of the lawyers in the group, Brendon, I don't know if there are others, how could there be more transparency in why the county doesn't even fight these suits? They just settle, and it seems like it just keeps building up the jail, and then we're told there isn't the money to put the facilities in the community. Well, I don't know. Do you know that, Brendon, or is anybody who's an attorney know that? I think it would be worth doing some research and talking, going to some of the Board of Supervisors meetings and see what they can do. But that would be breaking new ground.
This is Brendon. I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know why. I'm going to make an assumption that a lot of those conversations are privileged between the attorneys and they don't come out publicly. But it's not my area, so I don't know. I think the lawsuit, from my view, was actually complicated. I think people had good intentions when it was brought. I think people really had good intentions, but
I always thought they were allies too. I have to say I've become a tiny bit cynical. They get their court costs covered.
Mhm.
They actually make a good business deal doing this. And in the meantime, we're told that the county cannot apply for mental health facilities that are now funded by the state of California. The governor put $2.4 billion into something called a continuum of behavioral health care facilities in the community. We're told by the county they can't apply for that money because they can't afford to staff it. But they just put over 96 new sheriff's deputies into the jail as a result of the Baboo lawsuit. It doesn't compute. And I just, I would be interested in trying to find a way to break into this closed system because we need the facilities in the community.
Thank you. Kathy Kojimoto asked questions about the status of a legal lawsuit submitted on behalf of the family of the late Jonas Park, who was in Santa Rita as a pretrial detainee with a history of mental illness, including bipolar and anxiety, and was supposed to be given his meds while he was inside. He didn't get his meds and unfortunately committed suicide. Is there anyone have any information on that? Or know how to get more information? How would the family get more information about that, or the public?
That's a good question.
Okay, we'll leave that to another panel.
Yeah.
We'll bring that, we'll do some research on that. For maybe for Attorney Brendon Woods or Lonnie, how will electing a new sheriff make a difference in addressing the injustices that have been described tonight? What difference does it make?
It's all about relationships. It's all about the quality of the people. This situation has been developing at the jail for many, many years. And, one thing is it's very difficult to be a candidate for sheriff because the sheriff's associations have said basically you have to be a post-trained law police officer in order to run for sheriff. And sheriff is actually an administrator in many, many ways. And the question is to ask the candidates who are running is what are their priorities? What would they do? I could see a sheriff saying, we've got this $318 million. Maybe what we need is a new crisis facility in the community. I would think it would be in the sheriff's best interest, actually. Just imagine if the jail could get even smaller and the people who with serious mental illness or mental illness are diverted to places where they can heal. But Brendon, I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, I think a new sheriff or a sheriff who is more progressive, there's opportunity, right? There can be a platform and a goal that's geared towards decarceration. There can be a platform that's geared towards healing. There can be a platform that's geared towards mental health and trying to focus resources that are external to the jail as opposed to internal to the jail. There has to be a focus from all justice stakeholders, justice partners, to think about how we can rely less on incarceration. There's got to be an admission and recognition that incarceration is violence. Jail is violence. Caging people is violence. And we've got to move away from that model because it's making no one safe. No one safe.
Right. So here's another question for anyone who wants to jump at it. At a forum for the DA candidates, seems supporting alternate programs to current incarceration. Are current challenges, are they due to insufficient funding or lack of political will? So I think this is about DA candidates are talking about supporting different programs. Are these programs real, or are these just things that politicians say trying to get elected to an office? And if they are real, what are the current challenges to having these other programs become realized?
Well, I could take a turn at it. I called a very prominent health policy consultant in Sacramento when we were told by the county that they couldn't afford to staff facilities, therefore they wouldn't build any. I was told exactly what was just stated. This is no longer a matter of money. It is a matter of political will. The governor has put billions of dollars. The state is giving them out right now. Alameda, a number of us have been pushing Alameda County. What are you going to apply for? How are you going to do this? They sent out a couple of weeks ago something called a request for information, asking if any of us, and I'm sure many other people, had any ideas about shovel-ready projects that they could apply for. Well, there actually were quite a few. There are some motels that a number of nonprofits are trying to acquire. We need to honestly hold their feet to the fire. One of the things that's happening is California is putting in some waivers for Medicare, Medi-Cal reimbursement that would allow counties for the first time to get reimbursed by Medi-Cal for services provided in institutions of more than just 16 people. This is arcane, but I do think that if we had social entrepreneurs in our government, we could use this money that the governor has made, the legislature has made available. They passed the budget, and we could build a continuum of care in the community that could take a big piece of the incarceration out of our jail and put it in places where people would heal and stabilize and go on with their lives.
Good.
I'd like to add to that too. Okay, I think the premise of the question was about whether it's lack of funding or lack of political will. I think funding is an issue, but I think it's more will. Okay, I think it's more will. We have cases, we have attorneys trying to get people into collaborative courts, mental health court, and restrictions are fairly rigid at times where people are excluded. So for example, you can have someone walking down the street having a complete mental health crisis. They might swing at someone, they might do something on the scale of violence, and they are then excluded from mental health court. That's the person who needs it the most, okay? That's the one who needs it the most, but they don't give them services. They exclude them based on their crime type as opposed to the need. So there has to be a bigger will to take people who need services. And that goes across the board for all of our collaborative courts, all of them.
Great, thank you. I just saw a question.
And that's a great question for candidates when we're talking about when you're out there and you have questions for candidates at the debates, that's a question. What is your thought? What is your process about expanding collaborative courts, and how are you going to do it? Are you going to take the hard cases?
And there's a question about charging youth as adults. The question is, are there DA candidates who will continue? But I don't know that that's something we could answer in this type of a educational format. But here's one also for you, Attorney Woods, that Seth Stewart, a DA candidate, suggests a model like the Multnomah County, Oregon DA that tracks the disposition of all the cases. Do you understand that question? And would that help? Oh, you muted yourself.
Brendon, you're muted.
Uh-oh. We'll come back to you soon. As soon as you get that tech figured out, just start talking. Ms. Graves, if you could do anything, what would be the one or two things that you would do right away? What would you, if you had a community of 2,000 people ready to do what you wanted them to do and go where you wanted them to go, what would they do and where would they go?
So to support or advocate on behalf of the mentally ill, first of all, as Lonnie mentioned, we need to get people together and have forums and town halls, and so that we can all push the greater the number of people in support of the cause, the more likely you can force the Board of Supervisors and those that really will the control over what happens. If there's just one or two of us, they don't they don't care, because as Lonnie also pointed out, a lot of them are elected without anyone running against them. So there's more power, there's strength in numbers. So we would write letters, we would advocate, we would form a group as FASME, Families Advocating for the Seriously Mentally Ill. There are so many ways that we can put pressure. I write letters to the governor. I mean, over the smallest thing, I'll mention this one thing. My son was sent to Napa to be restored to competency. When he went, I received a bill of, I think, $40,000 for him. And the bill was saying he has to pay because when he was in Napa, Medi-Cal is not allowed to pay that bill because he was on Medi-Cal. And so I began to do the research and I discovered that developmentally disabled people in Napa they're not responsible for the bill. So at some point, and Lonnie could probably attest to this, there was legislation created to protect the developmentally challenged from being responsible for their bill. But unless we come together and we let our force of our voice demand change, then we really can't expect anyone to look out for our best interests. And they also said if I were to get my son conserved, that I would be personally responsible for that $38,000 bill. So that's also legislation, but it's not the same for the developmentally disabled. So I just say coming together in forums such as this and letting our voices collectively stand up for what we know is right.
Yeah, thank you. I would add to that, show up at the Board of Supervisors office,
Yes.
like Ms. Hancock said, and make them do what we want. Rudy, are you with us? There's a question I think that I'm not sure. And Attorney Woods, are you back?
I'm back. I'm sorry about that. My cursor disappeared and I couldn't unmute for a second.
Okay, there you go.
I'm not familiar with that model that was said, but I think I understand the concept. And that's kind of on my list of requests or questions for a DA candidate. What do they plan on doing with regards to collecting data information with regards to race, charging based on race, convictions, plea bargains? They should have data available and all that, at least to our office. And if they want to be more progressive, make it available to the public. Okay. I think it'd be quite telling who gets charged for what crime, and how those cases resolve.
Excellent. Rudy, are you there? We have a question only he can answer with the authority that it needs to be answered. So when he comes back, we're going to break in and ask him that question. So here's a question that I'm not sure I understand, but maybe it'll make a little more sense to you. Comment on the sometimes conflict of interest for public defenders when clients have severe mental illness. Public defenders, PD is focused on getting them out, but treatment may be linked to PC status. Does that make sense? Kimberly, do you understand that?
What was the question?
I think it's talking about a conflict of interest when someone is severely mentally ill and there's the treatment is predicated or based on, I guess, them being incarcerated or convicted or something.
I think the way I would answer that is, I think Mr. Woods would probably agree that he said that they're underfunded. And so I have come to realize that when my son was clearly suffering and he was being convicted, the public defender was not able to really address that aspect of it because I guess it's not in the behavioral courts. And then also they have a regimen that they just follow through, and it doesn't consist of addressing the mental health needs. So a court that's specific to someone struggling is the only way, in my opinion, that a public defender who is there to support their client can truly advocate for their true treatment needs in spite of whatever crime they have committed.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to answer too. I think each situation is different, each case is different. And I think we represent our clients, and sometimes the client's needs can come into conflict with other people's needs or requests. So it can get tricky. When it comes to service, I think we're funded better than most, but we're not funded where we need to be. We started out, when I took over, we had no social workers in our office at all. There's no one to deal with mental health. Now we have 7. We're about to hire 5 more, but still, if you look at our overall caseload, I mean, the amount of people we have coming through the system, it's not enough, right? I mean, there should be just a complete fleet of social workers who are able to help and assist our clients with their mental health issues. I mean, because everyone we see coming through, not everyone, but a lot of people we see come to the system have some sort of issue that needs to be addressed. And as I said earlier, you know, right now in our county, our funding is 2 to 1 on the dollar. I mean, the DAs are outfunded 2 to 1 to us right now.
So Rudy seems to have been hacked and can't get back in. What I want to encourage, I was going to ask him a question, and I want to talk to all the folk who have attended, and I want to ask you to ask someone this question. We had the benefit of hearing Rudy testify from or give his life experience, having been incarcerated for a long amount of time and having been given a long sentence. There are people in your community, there are people in your church, there are people in your bowling league, there are people who, if you ask them, will say, yes, I've been incarcerated. Find those people and ask them this question. Is life without the possibility for parole, does that make sense? Does that keep us safer? I want you to have that conversation with people who you can trust, know whether that's a good answer. I mean, can speak to it from life experience. Now I want to ask all for their last comment on, I want to ask everyone this question, and we could begin with Lonnie Hancock and then go to Kimberly, ladies first, and then we'll go to Brendon Woods, or we could say Beauty before. Either way, whatever makes you feel better. Whatever makes you feel better, attorney.
Either way, it's all bad. Thank you.
So, panelists, thank you. You are brilliant. We are deeply appreciative of your life experience, and let me acknowledge on behalf of those who have been listening, we appreciate and we know that you didn't get the wisdom that you have easily. You worked hard, you suffered, and you are sharing that wisdom with us. And for that, we are truly and deeply grateful. If you had 2,000 people to get motivated to go into the June 7th election, what would you want to prime? How would you prime them? What are there questions that we should have give to our sheriff and DA candidates? Are there something that you would want those 2,000 people to be sure to do? Lonnie, we'll start with you.
Well, I think Brendon raised some of the excellent questions that should be asked. I think that we're good, you know, our existing district attorney is not running for re-election. I happen to know that she made some efforts to buy some buildings for survivors of domestic violence and couldn't get it through the county. I'm very concerned about getting a responsive set of partners at the county level. But I think when we deal with district attorney candidates or candidates for sheriff, we need to know if they will be our partners and if they accept the idea of a continuum of care in the community, and that is crucial to get, because all of our other jobs will be easier if we can offer hope to people with mental illness so they don't end up in our jail. The money, I think, is out there. I think people are more and more recognizing we have a crisis, a mental health crisis in this country, let alone here. We would like Alameda County to be out in front and show how it can be done. So I would ask them for their ideas. I would ask them if they agree that we need a continuum of care. And I would ask them what they will do to partner with the Board of Supervisors, with community organizations, and with the Public Defender's Office to get a system we can be proud of.
Thank you, thank you. And before we go to Kimberly, just want to say to everyone, acknowledging I was helped to realize that there are some very, very brilliant people watching. Please put some more comments in the chat if you have suggestions, and ICJJ, Faith in Action, and all our partners will read, consider, and share that wisdom too. Kimberly?
So I would just add to that I would definitely want them to support the candidate that they think shares their values, has integrity, and will honestly not act as a career politician, but will be someone that operates from a goodwill, a sense of goodwill, someone that will want to really truly make a difference in our society. And as you pointed out, homelessness is really very pervasive and it's happening rapidly. We can't control it. People are in a position where they just don't care. So I would want those 2,000 people, first of all, to be someone that cares and has a sense of integrity themselves, and then be able to go out and canvass and actually help the candidate that they choose. And then also as many people as they can reach. So as they say, from the 2,000 people, if they can reach 10 people, it will just continue to multiply. Because in order for us to win, the candidates are not known. They're not, the ones that I know of are not career politicians. So you need to get their name out there. So that I think the more people you have to canvass and to make phone calls and do door knocking, the more likely we can win.
Thank you so much. We saved the best for last. Attorney Woods.
I think you can probably guess if I have two questions to ask of the candidates. It would be, what plan do you have to address racial disparities in the system? Number one. Then what plan do you have to end mass incarceration or decarcerate? And then you have to judge their answers. They can give you some pat bullshit answers that they always give, that had got no substance or depth, or they can give you a real plan. And I'm not sure I've ever seen a real plan when it comes to how are we going to decarcerate or end mass incarceration from any progressive prosecutor, like progressive. I have not seen a plan that say, okay, that makes sense. Someone has actually thought critically about the issue and they're going to put a plan in place that works. So I'm actually scared to say that out loud because I don't want anyone to like make one up just to get the votes. But that's what we need. That's what we need. Someone who's going to take on those two hard issues that have been systemically woven into the system and address them and attack them head on. Because if we don't do that, we're going to be in the same place 10 years from now, 20 years from now, no matter who the damn DA is. So
thank you. Very, 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 very powerful. I think we have thank you everyone for coming and hanging in with us. Thank you to our panelists, Rudy in his absence, but thank you so much. And I think Jean is going to give us just an announcement, and then we're going to send you on your way.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you for holding this forum. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me. I don't get invited enough places, so I'm just happy to show up, you know?
Yeah,
G?
this was nice.
What?
I don't know if Jean's still here.
Okay, well, I
And
thought we had some announcements, but listen to everyone.
I think, Teresa, there's a slide that can go up now that talks about some next steps.
Sure, and please, here's some key election dates. Remember, the primary election is a very, very important election, June 7th. Please visit ICJJ website, visit Faith in Action East Bay website, visit the websites of our partners in this, because together we can make a difference, and together we can change the world for the better. Remember that our children and our grandchildren, their lives and the quality of their lives depend on what we do. Remember that politicians are in power at on our behest and at our behest. We put them there. They should be afraid of us. They should respect us, and they should listen to what our wishes are. So get out there, talk to your neighbors. This is the most important election season in the lifetimes in our generation. Get out there, talk to people, bring people. This year, everybody's going to get a ballot in the mail. So help your neighbors vote, help your family members vote, find 10 strangers and help them vote so that our world and our community and our county gets better. Thank you to everyone who has a part. Again, to our panelists, thank you very much. Thank you to Sylvia for the translation. Thank you for our tech team, Peyton and Yuri and Teresa behind the scenes. Thank you all, and good night.